Gonna be.
All right.
We don't even need a synchronizing clap.
Do you want to do one just for old
Oh, just for old time's sake. You ready? There's a throwback.
There's a throwback.
So welcome everyone to the behind the scenes / making of the New Zealand series and just kind of chat with the RV geeks. They are here visiting us right now at our Northern Michigan camp. And since we just finished releasing all of the New Zealand videos, we thought, what a great opportunity to sit down and reminisce, because as you guys probably know, the New Zealand trip actually happened 4 years ago.
It's hard to believe.
Finally got the footage out. So,
We've been waiting for our home movies to come out. Thank you.
Ours will come out in another 4 years.
That's right.
so yeah, it was kind of an interesting time and interesting timing to finally release it. We had a space in our content calendar, and this has been kind of sitting in the back of our minds that we need to do this for 4 years, and so it's finally out there. And one of the big questions we get, because people still are confused, even though we said why it was, and that it was 4 years ago, like why release it now and not right when we got back from the New Zealand trip, which you talk about in episode 1.
Yeah, I hope if you haven't watched it yet, please watch episode 1, because
that explains it.
we did put what's it called? A prequel,
like a
preamble.
Yeah, there you go.
That briefly described why we waited so long, but I think overall it basically just came down to it with the advent of COVID and the craziness that was happening in the world, we just didn't feel like it was right to put a story of adventure out during that time, and we got busy, to be honest, with other things as well.
The world did sort of stop for, a year and a half, 2 years? I mean, everything was... no one was going to New Zealand from here anyway.
Yeah, and there was a lot of hardship, and just kind of putting out like a series about fun travel just seemed not, appropriate. And
right after we got back was really when things went to hell and closed down, and there was no travel, and it you're right, it didn't make sense at that time.
And when we got back from New Zealand, I think we were still in shock.
Yeah.
There was a mental challenge too.
Sure.
I don't think I could have edited it if I wanted to. It's just
I know we were floored by how seriously New Zealand took COVID.
holy hell.
There's a huge...
Don't just Oh my god, it's giant. There's a giant spider behind here.
Well, I thought I would stand up.
Well, there are also an awful lot of strange bugs and creatures in the South Pacific. Maybe
you still see it?
Yeah, he's on the backside of the valence.
That is a giant, that's a really big spider for Michigan.
Maybe it came
from Florida.
I don't think so. God, it's huge.
You're gonna get it? Don't let it bite you.
It's very fast. Oh my god.
Did you
Got
get
him.
Did you crush it?
Wow.
Talk about an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, really, that'll amp things up. Holy cow. Thank you for killing that, Tom.
Oh, that's definitely making it in the blooper reel.
Okay, where were we?
There seems to be a lot of things that's coming together to stop this video from being made.
Was I talking?
I
don't even know what you're saying.
I don't know, but
I saw
That was
something
just like,
move
oh
out
my
of the corner of my
God.
eye, and I thought it was maybe just like a shadow.
I thought it was a
watching
raven
it.
outside.
Holy
Like,
crap.
maybe it was really close.
in case there was a strange edit right here, it's because there was an enormous spider that apparently came with us from New Zealand.
4-year-old spider.
That's right. It's been growing.
It was huge, like a 4-year-old.
Maybe it had something to contribute to the conversation.
I might just let this
Where
roll.
were we?
Where were we? We
were talking about kind of what happened
when we got
when we
back.
got back and how the world
We were
really
in shock,
changed.
yeah.
I know. We were in shock from how seriously New Zealand took COVID when it first hit, right? Because the whole time we were there, we kept saying to ourselves, well, we're sequestered in our little RVs. We're fine. We can stay on the road.
Yeah.
And it became abundantly clear as we were moving along, they weren't playing by those rules.
Yeah,
They were.
I think it to me, it made sense in a lot of regards because they were an island nation that like, hey, let's lock it down. But I guess they were afraid it might have already been there. They were trying to prevent the spread. I guess it made sense at the time, and they were also very like nice about it. Right?
Well, yeah, right.
But it made it challenging for us.
I think for me, looking back on this footage, it was just, you know, now that we're kind of mostly on the other side of the pandemic, and at the time we had never experienced anything like that, so it was all new territory. Nobody knew what the heck was going on, or what to do, or what was the right protocol, or what really worked and what didn't work to prevent the spread. And so we were all just kind of hoping we were lucky.
And really we were, because we came within a day of being trapped.
Yeah.
For quite some time, because when we were that last day when we got one of the last ferries from the South Island back to the north,
second to last.
And if we had missed that, there were no opportunities to get out, and we would have been in New Zealand for a long time.
Which, of course, would not have been a hardship. I mean, we had talked over and over and over again about whether or not we would just commit to staying, get an Airbnb on the beach somewhere, and be like, okay, let's ride the lockdown down.
As a matter of fact, if not for the fact that you had 2 dogs that you didn't want to be trapped away from indefinitely, we probably would be saying Kia ora today. We'd be living in New Zealand.
We'd be coming to you from Auckland right now.
So New Zealand at the time was offering very generous packages, financial help, visas, extensions for people who were trapped.
Our visas had already automatically been extended for another like 9 months or something. Like, they were expecting we were going to be stuck.
Well, I don't know if any of us ever revealed it in talking about our biggest discussion while we were figuring out what to do was, would the 4 of us rent, a beachfront Airbnb for several months and just stay in New Zealand? And we almost did.
Well, especially when we were all thinking about being trapped on a plane for 17 hours to get back to North America, when we had no idea how it was transmitted yet. I mean, we knew nothing at the time. This was the beginning of a global pandemic, and it was like, wow, we could be putting ourselves at risk by trying to get back home where we'd feel safe.
I think one of the most sobering things was the drive to the airport when we finally were okayed to leave the campground where we'd been staying, because we had our tickets in hand and could go to the airport with them. And there was no one. It was like a post-apocalyptic scene where no one was on the road except us.
It was like the day the earth stood still.
It was very sobering.
Yeah, it felt weird.
And then getting to LAX, bustling airport, busy all the time, and
empty.
There's like 3 people that you see in the whole place. It was very, very weird.
I think one of our flights, we were the only ones on it too. And to be on a full-size airliner, the only passengers.
I think there were 6.
Yeah, right.
Us. It was like the whole plane. It was like, okay, there's 2 people, and there's us. So I'm glad we all made it.
Well, none of us were around in 1918 to experience what happened back then. So it made sense. No one knew what to do.
I did have a question. So in the series, in episode 1, getting to the airport and stuff, and we kind of started getting little notifications from the CDC and travel alerts and stuff. Like, was there any point where you guys were like worried about it impacting the trip some? I mean, obviously not as much as it did, but like, were you worried about that at all?
I don't recall being worried. I think because I just couldn't fathom that it was going to become what
we weren't going to China.
Right.
Yeah, right. Like, and it seemed at the time like that was the source of it, and we're like, all right, fine, we'll be in the South Pacific.
Yeah, we're thinking Asia. Like, we're not going to Asia. So.
Yeah, and I just don't think I mean, even in my wildest sci-fi fantasy, I don't think I could have actually thought that what happened would have happened.
That's saying something considering how many wild sci-fi fantasies you have.
I do put the Geeks in RV Geeks, but
yes, it does. Well, I think that part of the reason I didn't absorb it, I think, as to how serious it might get is because we were so on the verge of flying out when it happened. We were literally
like in the van on the way to the airport.
You guys had come to...
That's when we first got a notice of it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You got it on the phone.
You guys had come to Las Vegas to join us so that we could take a van to Los Angeles to hop a plane, and it was all happening. We were getting
too far
on the
into it.
plane.
Yeah.
So what were we going to do? Say, well, let's not get on the plane. We've been planning all this time.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the timing of when Fantasy RV Tours canceled their trip. It was right as we were about to go because
No, actually it was while we were there.
We were
so
there.
for the viewers,
so
the whole reason that we went to New Zealand was to film for the RVers TV show, all four of us being co-hosts of that show. And we were going to meet up for a portion of it with Fantasy RV Tours, who is a big sponsor of the show, and they do tours of New Zealand as part of their services. And we were going to meet up with them on the South Island,
Right.
and do a section with them, film some of that, and provide that as part of the show, which we actually we did, and you can see that in season 3, episode 6. I looked it up before
Wow.
I was going to
before
say,
we chatted.
of the four of us, you have the best memory, but that was impressive.
Yeah, right.
I had to look it up. So season 3, episode 6 of the RVers has the New Zealand stuff and quite a bit of the footage that we actually ended up taking there. But the Fantasy RV tour that we were supposed to meet up with canceled
When we were in
shortly
Auckland, wasn't
after
it?
we.
Yeah, I think it was when we were in Auckland.
Yeah, I
when
had
we first
forgotten
arrived.
that. We were
Was it
already,
really that
I
soon?
thought so, yeah.
we were, if not in Auckland, it was
It was
around
very
the time
close.
we picked up RVs, I guess.
So we
Because we
flew
scrambled.
out. We flew out on February 28th because we skipped the leap day.
Oh, right. Yes, we lost a day.
We lost the leap day. And then we landed in Auckland on March 1st, I guess that would have been. And then the WHO declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic on the 11th of
Oh, wow.
March. I just
Yeah.
looked that up as well to refresh my memory.
So I actually think we
Was it
were
later?
into the RVs quite a ways.
I guess
think
we were.
We were on our way. We turned and we were on our way south towards the South Island.
Okay.
And then I do remember having that conversation like, well, do we
Now
still
what do
go
we
to the
do?
South
Yeah.
Island?
Yeah, right, now what?
Because we're not meeting up with anybody.
But that's where, like you said earlier, like we thought we were self-contained and like it wouldn't affect
like it was
us.
gonna be
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. I thought we were going to be able to quarantine alone in our little RVs, and the four of us would be our own little unit, and we'd be fine.
And
Well,
it makes sense that they would cancel too, because their clientele tends to be older.
Yeah,
and
sure. And it's a long way to go in the
It's
midst of a
challenging.
pandemic.
That would
Yeah.
have been a
So-
crazy logistical thing because there were flights being canceled left and right.
Right.
We were constantly looking at flights, and the prices were crazy. Remember that we could switch our flight, but we'd have to pay
Pay a
like
fortune.
thousands of dollars,
Right.
and we just
We figured we'd put that towards an
14
Airbnb
grand per
instead.
ticket.
Yeah, right. Well, hey.
we all kind of took a gamble of just like, hey, let's wait and see if our flight still goes out on the day that it's supposed to. And I
Yeah.
think we moved, and it ended up being moved one day.
One day, I think. Yeah.
The flight was originally canceled, but then they rebooked us.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a day later.
Well, and I think a lot of that came about because of the fact that the governments were realizing there were so many people who were now stranded in
Yeah.
various countries, and it's like, how do we get them home? We want to stop flight travel to keep new people from coming in,
Yeah.
but we got all these people who really want to get back to their dogs and their kids and their parents and their homes.
And we got in touch with the U.S. Embassy in New Zealand. They knew we were there. They kind of knew
Right.
everyone was there. So they had counts of basically how many people were stranded.
And I remember, again, even very close to the end, it might have been like when we were on the South Island, realizing they were actually going to shut the ferry down and we might be trapped on the South Island now, when we were getting notices, I think via Instagram, from people in New Zealand who were saying,
Yeah.
you guys need to lock down, like you need to find a place. And even then I was like, we're in our little RVs, we're fine, right?
Yeah.
But they were telling us, like, you need to find a spot to quarantine in.
Well, in hindsight now, you can see how some countries were very, very aggressive in those lockdowns, and New Zealand being one of them, made it so that our thought, oh, well, we're not going to go near people. We'll just go out and enjoy the national parks, and we'll have our visit to New Zealand. That didn't work because New Zealand shut everything down, and we were forced off the road.
If we went and hid in the woods somewhere, we probably would have been fine. And we kind of had almost prepared for that. One thing that wasn't shown in the series was that I think it was just after Milford Sound. We went to that grocery store because
Oh.
Yeah, everyone, we were stocking
And
up.
we bought so much food.
That's right.
We
Yeah.
bought, remember, large quantities of rice and canned goods. And, I mean,
Potatoes, like we were planning for the apocalypse.
Yeah, right. Like we were going to be.
I think we would have been sufficient on food for over a month or something. And that's kind of what we were like, well, if it comes to it. We ended up giving a lot of that food away.
Mhm.
Yeah,
like,
it's other people stranded in that RV park.
Yeah,
No,
all
the-
of the
the big
canned
limiting-
goods and things that weren't,
We were
The
going to
limiting
some
factor,
carry-on.
though, the limiting factor of all of it was the cassette toilets, which have to be emptied basically
This
every
is
other day.
True. We couldn't do the woods.
We would have
No.
had we would have
Oh,
had to go
yeah.
to a hardware store and buy a shovel so that we could go out and use the woods.
Do a cat hole.
Pit.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember it only because of seeing it in the footage. I didn't have this recollection, but when we went back to that campground or that boondocking spot, the free camping spot, right before getting on the ferry, and there were officials, police or whatever, who were coming through just
Yeah.
checking to make sure everyone was okay.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, how civilized, right? I was like, wow, New Zealand really cares. It just seemed actually like, here's an example of sort of like official government workers, like doing something in order to help tourists who were clearly in a dire situation.
Yeah.
And it,
But
it felt
And we
good.
were so stressed out at the time because we had like just gotten those ferry tickets. Like I remember we rolled into that spot at midnight, and like that's when we bought them. And like for a short period of time, there was only one available.
Yeah,
we were
right.
trying to get two so that we'd be on the same ferry.
Who were we leaving behind? Oh,
we
it was
didn't
Tom,
want, we didn't
apparently.
want one of us. We knew one thing for sure: if we got trapped in New Zealand, you were staying with us.
That's right, yeah, right. We
I
were
think
not
the
staying
feeling was mutual.
Yeah, we knew that. We thought it's all or nothing.
Yeah, it's like do not leave us, because I do think that like because we were there with you guys, I mean, we were all super stressed out and kind of starting to lose it there at the end. But I think we would have lost it way sooner if we weren't traveling.
It was a
with
good
you
support
guys.
network.
Absolutely.
I feel the
And
same.
I think the same thing came in later on when we all went to Europe together, knowing, even though we were hopscotch caravanning and not together all the time, just knowing that you have trusted friends,
Mhm.
a reasonable distance away, and our ability to keep in touch with each other on WhatsApp. So
Yeah, I
we
was going
could,
to say,
if there was a
looking at the
problem.
map and seeing the smiling faces of other people you're traveling with, even though they're not in the immediate vicinity, is a comfort.
comfort.
Yeah.
It is.
And having the kind of burden of figuring everything out spread amongst 4 brains instead of just 2, it was real. We were really grateful.
I will admit something now for the first time.
Ooh,
Part of me,
big reveal.
Breaking news.
This is breaking news, that when we were having those discussions about whether the 4 of us would stay in New Zealand for what could have been months.
I think the term that they were all using at the time was indefinitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and
That was the term.
it could have been a long,
Yeah.
long time. I personally was a
Leaning
little
towards
disappointed that you had dogs. Because when the decision finally got made and came around to a factor being, we really can't leave the dogs indefinitely. I want to stay in New Zealand for like a year.
I know, but it was Mocha. and
I
Bella,
would have
and-
liked to
Was there
do that
Mocha
as
and
well, to be
Bella?
honest.
And honestly, if they hadn't been as old as they were at the
Yeah.
time, I
Yeah.
think that was really the major factor.
And we understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
sure.
understood, but and it was a
If
pro
we
and a
had
con.
Luna and Solar and they were this young, we would have been like, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. We'll
They'll be
stay in
great,
New
But
yeah.
Zealand.
we understood that Mocha and Bella were getting up there, and you wanted to get home. And the fact that if we had made the decision to stay for
We've been
a
stuck
week,
a long time.
Yeah.
we could have been literally trapped for 6 months or a year, and that was a big unknown.
Do we
Yeah.
even know when they actually opened back up again? Like, what would that window of time have been for us?
That would be fascinating.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Hey, you did all your research. You didn't look that up.
This is a hypothetical
It'll be in the video
question.
description.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
put
put that down below.
Comment down below when I look it up. So
Put in the blog post.
Yeah, that's right.
hypothetically, because everything just kind of got worse from there.
It did.
You know, everybody was hoping that it would all kind of spring back in a matter of weeks or months. And
Well, and we were getting messages from friends of ours from Canada who were in the States for the winter, who were being told that they needed to get home quickly, right? And so they were warning us, like, you're going to fly back into LA, but you may not be able to make it back across the border because they may be closing the Canadian border. And so then that was an extra stress for us. We're like, just getting back to LA isn't going to be enough.
The journey for
yeah.
you.
Like, what's going to happen when we go to cross the border again?
I think surprisingly, considering what happened, that the timing worked out pretty well for the 4 of us, I would say, because we we saw a lot of New Zealand.
We
It
did.
wasn't until the very end, and you mentioned it was in Milford Sound, which for anyone who doesn't know, it's as far south as you can go.
I know, way out on the edge of the island.
And how many hours did we drive that last day to get to that ferry? It was like a
12-hour day.
Yeah, I thought I think the map said 8, but everything in New Zealand, whatever the map said, you could almost double it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because those
The
roads
roads are narrow, they were windy, we were going through the
every
mountains.
bridge
Yeah.
is a single lane bridge.
And we were two of the
so
biggest vehicles on the road.
Yeah.
We
We
just
were two of
couldn't
the only vehicles
drive.
on the road.
It didn't matter if you could drive as fast as you were comfortable, and the small cars would still be passing you. Like it was, that's just how it was in those RVs.
I forgot about that. That was brutal.
So it was I think 12+ hours of driving.
It was a big day.
Continuously.
And we didn't have great cell service where we were down
No,
near
that
Milford
side of the
Sound.
island was terrible.
Yeah, it was like we just didn't have much connectivity, and we're like frantically trying to figure out: are they turning the ferries off? Are we stuck?
Yeah.
That was hard.
Well, and they'd already shut. So there's, again, for people who don't know the setup, there's only one way to fly out of New Zealand to many major international destinations, and that's from Auckland on the far
North
northern
Island.
end of the North Island. And so when you're on the far southern end of the South Island, and the only way to get between the two islands is about to be discontinued indefinitely.
Because hadn't they already stopped domestic air travel?
From Christchurch
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, so-
To Auckland? Yeah,
We-
because
we-
we thought
we-
we could fly.
We thought that was the original discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll leave
Yeah,
the
fly
RVs
back.
in Christchurch and fly to Auckland to get back, and that stopped. So-
And I remember, did we have contact with Wilderness? So
Yeah,
the RVs
we
we were
did.
renting was from Wilderness. I think they were really accommodating. They're like,
Yeah.
whatever
Oh,
you need,
yeah.
we're
Like, leave them
extending.
wherever you need to.
Yeah, right.
Wilderness RV was great. They said, just leave them and we'll get them.
Yeah.
We'll find them.
And
Yeah.
it worked out.
It worked
They're
out.
probably tracking us.
Yeah, they probably were. And I'm sure there were a couple of times if they were that they're like, why are they on that road? They should not be.
But remember, that was one of the reasons we wanted Wilderness, was because they actually would allow us to take it on like dirt roads. Like some of
Yeah,
them
that's
didn't
right.
allow dirt roads.
That's
and
true.
We
Yeah.
did some dirt.
That epic long dirt road that you droned the two RVs going across on our way to Lake
between
Puckakee.
Takapo and Puckakee.
That was a spectacular road.
That
Except
was
for that
fantastic.
very first night when we went to that cave for the night.
Oh,
And we drove in and those dirt roads. And I was nervous because it started getting, remember, it was rough and
was,
narrow and dark. And it was just like,
And
what?
wet, it was
This
raining.
country is insane.
Uncivilized.
New Zealanders are way hardier than we are.
They don't know how to pave a road.
I think a lot of it was just it was night, big RV,
Yeah.
narrow roads, and it was
All
it was
new.
a little uncomfortable.
And you were driving
Driving
for
on
the
the
first
wrong
time.
side.
sitting
on the
right
other side of the road.
Wrong side of the rig,
Yeah.
wrong side of the road.
And how
And
many
the
times
weather-
do you think we all walked up to the wrong side of the RV?
At least 100.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, oh wait, are you driving?
Yeah, I'm like,
Well,
no,
actually, no, I'm not.
I guess I am now.
So we had the experience of driving on the opposite side of the road. I don't want to say the wrong side of the road. In England, in an RV prior to that.
Yes.
And
It was a little more
it
natural
takes
for us.
practice, but you had said something, I think in one of the videos, that we repeating, especially
Mantra.
in the beginning, which is
Turn right, stay
turn right, stay left.
Oh,
turn
yeah.
left, stay left.
Yeah.
Go straight, stay left,
Stay
stay
left.
left, stay left.
I think I said that the entire time we were driving. Every time you made a turn, like turn left, stay left.
Yeah.
Left.
It,
Keep
it,
left,
it really
keep
does
left.
help just being on the other side of the vehicle though, because your brain kind of eventually is like, well, like I think maybe once I like started to go to the wrong side of the road and you immediately feel it. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't
wrong.
right.
This is wrong.
The hardest part was getting back behind the wheel back in North America and
Oh, that
not
felt
turning left and
so
staying
weird.
left.
Yeah. So you can see that in episode 4 when Tom gets back into the truck after we get picked up at the airport, and he's like, "This feels so
It's so
weird,"
long.
and the truck was so
Well-
big, and the roads are so big. And it's like, what? Those
I
RVs were
actually
fun.
really liked those RVs.
Oh, they were
and we've had
fantastic.
them basically the same ones in Europe.
Yes.
And while they are different, they're really lightly built, which I think
Mhm.
gives them a lot of the like sort of nimbleness they have. But at the same time, they felt solid enough that it wasn't like, I mean, I've been in really light rigs in the US, like, oh, it feels like it's going to fall apart. They didn't
Yes.
really feel like they were going to fall apart. They
Why
were just
not? How'd they
very
do
light.
that?
Well,
they
they-
weren't dualies. They were single rear wheel,
Right,
which
single axle.
made them a lot easier to drive. Just they
That's
felt
true.
light.
But also
Yeah,
the windows are lightweight. They're plastic
yeah, the
instead of
acrylic.
glass.
Yeah.
Acrylic.
There were
So
a lot
I
of things that light.
Do you want to call out in episode 2? So even though it was 4 years before this was all edited and put together, Tom had the idea to do the montage of episode 2, at the very start of episode 2, of introducing the RVs. You'll have, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. I think we're coming off of a streak of watching comedians in cars getting coffee.
Oh, that's right.
And so, like, immediately after we got into the RV and started driving, Tom just kind of started, like, brainstorming this, like, how about, like, I introduce these, you know, kind of in that similar style, like, real quick, you know, shots. And so he filmed, it, and, like, we found, you know, it was 4 years ago, but we found that he had already kind of scripted it out 4 years ago.
I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, I totally forgot about it.
If you haven't watched any Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, go watch it. Every single one of the intros is basically just like what I did there. I just copied it and did it for the RV.
Yeah, Jerry telling what the details of the vehicle.
He always does it for a regular car, and I thought, like, this would be the most ridiculous thing to do this for a motorhome.
We noticed that immediately because we love Comedians in Cars, and it was so well done.
Yeah, as soon as it started going, we're like, oh my god, it's Jerry Seinfeld, Comedians in Cars. This is great.
I expected you were going to start cracking jokes.
Well, he does crack a couple of them, like umlaut over the U and looks like a turtle and all this stuff. It's just like little snarky things to say about
I had already written that entire script in New Zealand, apparently.
That's great.
I found it. I was like, oh, I'll just do this.
Past you was so organized, Tom.
So that gets me to, so we have had quite a few comments and questions left on the videos. So I know one of them that I wanted to have an opportunity to talk about was about the photography and camera work. Because we were there filming for the RVers TV show, which was on Discovery and PBS. So, like, legit television.
And now still available to stream.
Yes, absolutely. And so we ended up having to bring quite a bit of gear. And I remember that was, like, quite a big deal.
It was daunting.
We were getting everything checked and put on board so that it was safe and it'd make it fine. And I know you guys had quite a few cases of gear.
We had more suitcases full of camera gear than we did clothing.
Yes.
By far.
The chances are we wore the same things over and over again.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I remember, so we had the big tripods.
Yes.
We had the big Sony cameras. And then drones and mics and lapels.
And GoPros for wet activities and the 360 cam. And
between the four of us, we probably had a dozen cameras with us, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
More if you include the phones.
So. Yeah. So we did have a couple of specific questions, and maybe you could talk about the Insta360 and using that to capture some of the...
I think this was the first trip that I actually used the 360, and a lot of it was sort of experimental, I think, as I hadn't really used it a lot. But I think I had sort of done some tests with it before, and I basically found out that you could sort of simulate a drone with the 360 utilizing an extremely long pole. And I've got a very thin fiberglass pole. If you're curious about how some of those shots were done, there's a very thin fiberglass pole with the 360 camera at the end of it. And particularly when you're traveling internationally, I think we'll talk a little bit about drones too. You do kind of need to understand what that country's rules are around drones. A lot of times there are there's kind of openings where you don't need huge permits or certifications to fly a drone, so you just have to be within those limits. And I think we were in most of New Zealand, but still, I don't think any of us wanted to fly in public environments or around people. We only use the drones in remote locations where we're not gonna be problematic to anybody.
And I think we had even gotten some guidance from Wilderness when they were telling us about it, that you need to get permission to drone in a lot of areas because private land and issues with public lands, and again, Maori. So there were a lot of things.
So we just didn't want to fly a lot unless we were like fully like, I don't think this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And I think you guys had brought a drone. I'd brought one as well. I think since then the drones have gotten smaller and even easier to take in these locations.
It's all about the weight.
A lot of it's about the weight and size, because if it's small enough, it's not going to be as loud, impactful, and if it crashes,
dangerous.
Less likely to kill.
Gosh, I'm just remembering you brought your FPV drone.
I was attempting to fly.
And it was brand new, remember?
Yeah, and I burned it out this first time I flew it.
and then you were
All right,
trying
So
so
to
then it was
order.
just dead weight the whole rest of the trip?
Trying to
We only had
order the
11
motors.
cameras, not
Yeah.
12.
Oh, that's right.
So that was an interesting thing. Yeah, one of my drones didn't fly. There's actually footage somewhere from that first flight, but there was actually a computer problem on it that caused it to crash.
Right.
Yeah.
But the 360 enabled me with that long pole to basically simulate a drone type scene in public environments.
Yeah.
And you'll see that a lot throughout the show, particularly like around I think on the beach and in
The
the
ferry
thermal
ride.
geyser
Well, the one-
and
The ferry
over-
ride.
The
ferry ride.
one that makes it the most jarring, where you're sure
There can't
it's
be
a
a drone.
drone, was on the ferry, and you put that up and around the back of that ferry, and anyone watching it would be like, how could you drone in a place like that?
Yeah.
'Cause
How
it
fast
really,
was the ferry going?
it was
Yeah.
impressive how much it looked like a drone.
Yeah,
over
it did.
over all the people in the hot water beach.
Right.
Yes.
So I was able to get this. I got a lot of looks. We'll say that.
did
Because
look
there's
weird
this
with
giant pole
Yeah.
and people. So if you actually look at a lot of that, you will literally see a lot of people going.
And you can
Right.
occasionally see like the position of your hand, like you can tell that there's
Yeah.
like, something you're doing
Yeah.
something with your
Yeah.
hand, even though you
But-
can't see the pole.
But the 360 cam like automatically removes the pole from the
That's
shot,
brilliant.
and so it does make it like easier to edit in that respect. But then editing wise,
Editing is also
it's-
extremely difficult.
It's
though.
hard because the 360 camera is literally looking 360, and so
I
when
have
you
to give you only a view in one direction. So
he has to pick afterward, like, okay, we're gonna pan down this way
Yeah.
and turn back this way to capture how the camera was moving at the time and get it pointing in the right direction.
The only way 360 works without any editing is basically to provide a full 360 video where you can actually scroll and look around, or VR where you actually can look
Move
in
your
any
head.
direction.
Yes.
So it worked extremely well, I think, for
Mhm.
what we did. I really enjoyed using it, and I think I'll continue to use it in some situations. But it definitely added a lot to the editing workflow.
Oh,
Which,
yeah.
which explains why we don't own one.
Yeah, and especially if you do all of that, you pick an angle that you want and you export the clip that you're now going to import into your project, and then you change something.
Yeah.
Now you've got to go back
Yeah.
and re-edit.
I
and
gave the
re-export.
RVers TV show all the footage as well, and I had created a few clips. They only used the clips I exported. They
Yeah.
didn't actually.
Yeah.
They didn't
Do
even
it.
spend the time.
Well,
We will confess that we
creating
have
it.
played with clips you've given us from shared
No,
instances and
no,
everything.
we haven't.
Oh,
You
I
have.
have, and I've gone into it, and I've started to do stuff,
And
and then I'm like, yeah, not
One
going there.
very interesting 360 thing, though, that I think it did was actually in your bungee jumping scene.
Oh,
you
yeah.
carried the 360.
I did,
Yes, in his
And
hand.
because of the way, I mean, it flopped all over the place, right? That is an extremely challenging scene to get if you can't, like, literally, like, move, like, when to stabilize it. It literally stayed. It was like this, you know. But I was able to still capture enough of a smoothness
Right.
that that it was usable. I think I used a tiny bit of your GoPro, but most of it was unusable.
Well,
It was just kind of
right.
everywhere.
Yeah, too much
Right. Well,
motion.
so I carried the GoPro down, and there was a shot we used in our video that showed us bungee jumping where you can see me in it, but as soon as it's not aimed the right way, and I
It just
tried
kinda,
to.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
but
like-
And the only
It's
You
your
option-
have your
360
focus
sorta.
elsewhere while you're plummeting
Yeah,
off of
you
a platform.
can't-
Yeah, right.
It's
Like
only
the
a
camera
little
is sort of last minute.
It was
Yeah.
only like 150 feet down. It wasn't that far.
Yeah, but,
But
you
I
jumped
thought
like
the
it was a
scene-
suicide, though.
Yeah.
Well,
It just dove right off.
it was kind of funny, but I thought that, so first of all, it was easier because I didn't have my glasses on because I
Yes.
wasn't allowed to wear them, and I can't see it all. And I'm like, it was like stepping down steps off the RV. I couldn't see. I was jumping into an abyss. And the other thing was that I thought if I stayed up there too long, I might lose my nerve.
It happens. I can attest. It does
So-
happen.
Yeah,
So-
I think Tom was really nice.
You
and
were
he-
very
He
generous
did
with
not
my.
show
All the-
all
all
of the false
I
starts.
still owe you
There
for
was
that.
quite a
don't I?
bit of time that John stood up
And
there.
so I'm gonna set the scene. So they were like out on the bridge, and Tom and I were like around, like we
The
were.
gorge kind of
Yeah,
thing.
we were like on the other side of the gorge to get a good shot with the long lenses and stuff. And we were set up with it, you know, on the tripod, zoomed in on them. And so we like couldn't really like hear what was going on there. So we're in our own little world, and we were just like, oh
oh, it's okay, John. It's okay. It's okay.
The greatest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your narration behind the camera when I'm not jumping is some of the best I think I've
I will
ever
say
heard.
that we included.
It's okay to give up. Just walk away.
I don't blame you.
There's no
Don't blame me.
shame in
There's no
living the rest of your life.
But of course, this was coming from the two people who absolutely were not doing the bungee jumping. So
No.
Did you really look at that rubber cord? There were so many
No.
broken little rubber bands. I was
No
like,
time.
oh my god.
It was water. It was water down below, and the moment
Oh
when
yeah,
they would,
because
the moment when they would snap, you'd only be a couple of feet over
That's
the water
true.
anyway.
This
It'd
is
be harmful.
true.
That's
you
true.
might.
I have to say my very favorite moment of all the footage we shot, we used it in our video, and it's after John's false starts where he wasn't sure
false start.
where he wasn't going to be able to go, and he finally did it. Your footage of you filming behind the camera quietly said something like, "Yay, John, you did it." or something to that effect. And
My best cheerleader,
It's
Kate.
in our video, and you can hear Kate's support for John and I. We just love you for that.
So before that, though, we did another adrenaline
Oh,
thriller.
that was worse
thing.
for me.
Yeah, I want to
Well,
say.
you don't like to swim.
I don't
Kudos
swim.
for you. You don't swim, and we convinced him that it would be a great idea for us all to whitewater raft over the highest commercially available waterfall in the world.
Yes.
23 feet, 7 meters or so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And John like went along with it.
I don't know. I have no recollection of from the moment we decided that this is what we were going to do until we came back out from the raft. I remember going to the restaurant after. But other than looking at
You were
footage,
just in shock.
I was
the
like
whole
in shock
time.
mode. My brain was just shut
was-
down.
he
Like,
was
I'm just going to follow
traumatized.
people and do whatever happens. So that's
The-
not my thing. Water is not my thing.
I remember coming up out from under the water and looking around and saying,
We've lost
"Kate's
Kate!
out, Kate's out!"
Well, and you got
You were
back in
just-
the boat.
you were
You
doing-
seemed almost annoyed that we were so worried about you.
So worried
Yeah, right.
about me. I was like, it was no big
You
deal.
were just down there doing the backstroke like nobody's business.
Yeah,
Like, I got to swim in the water. It was beautiful.
Well, I think the only thing that makes that like an actually safe enough thing to do is that pool it falls into is relatively calm. There's no
Yes.
other giant waterfalls
Yeah, and
below
they
You
do-
it.
did notice
right.
though, people
You
got
don't have to
stuck
regain
down
your
under the
composure.
waterfall and
Yeah.
other
Oh,
boats.
yeah.
fell.
Well,
that-
and then our guide,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think his name
He
was
got-
Tom.
He
got
got his
pulled
hand.
He got pulled down and he got hit on
If
the
you
bottom.
watch carefully in the footage, you'll
Yeah,
see him
it
come up.
takes
your
him a
hand.
while to come back up. But for me, I was in the front, and what happened is we kind of hit like right where I was sitting, and so the water just kind of came in, scooped me up, and pulled me out. And I don't think I was actually underwater for all that long. I kind of just went sideways,
See,
and
I
I
have-
popped up, and I was like, oh.
I have no fear of
That
heights
was
at
great.
all. We sat at the brink of Upper Yosemite Falls,
Mhm.
and I had my hiking boots hanging over the edge, and I leaned completely out over to take a picture of my hiking boots looking 2,500 feet down in the Yosemite Valley. So I do not have fear of heights, but I do have a fear of being held underwater. And that-
Everyone should.
And after seeing the people who got pulled out of the boat and pulled into the water,
Or
I
even
was-
that boat that got held.
right?
Yeah, one of the rafts.
I was so happy that was after we'd
We
already
hadn't
done
seen
it.
that
No.
until afterwards.
Yeah.
I would not have gone.
I didn't
John
really
wouldn't
show
have
all
gone.
the footage, but we saw some really gnarly, like,
Yeah.
we really had a good ride as
We did.
like getting out goes. Some of them were pretty beat up.
Rafting down that river, besides the waterfall, it was so cool because you were
Oh.
basically in like this. It was like a half tunnel of
Yeah.
jungle.
Oh,
so
so
Tropical
tropical.
forest, yeah.
and you had these ferns and these trees, and they were singing with
And the
these
water was quite
birds,
warm,
and the
actually. It
water
was not that
warm.
cold.
No, it was comfortable.
And it was just so cool. And our guide Tom, he said that sometimes they would kayak it or raft it at night, and there would be the glowworms. So we went
Yeah.
and saw the glowworms up
Yeah.
in the North Island. The glowworm caves I guess are everywhere there, and there are glowworms on the sides
Wow.
of the river, and so you float down it and it's lit by glowworms, and I was just
Part
like,
of-
that would be so cool to
part
go
of
back and
what
do.
That would be like my Titanic nightmare.
Night river.
Totally, floating in the
John-
dark down a river, unknowing when we're
Right.
going to go over a 23-foot waterfall.
The only thing
Not
that would-
my idea
The
of
only thing
fun.
that scares John more than going in the water is going in the water at night.
Yes, yes.
Dark water.
hmm
I think
We won't make you
something
do that.
that
Thank
made
you.
it somewhat more comfortable as well, though, is it was very jungle-esque, right?
Yeah.
And in the jungle, a lot of times times you think of like dangerous spiders and snakes and animals, but that's something that's so neat about New Zealand is that it actually has almost no animals that will harm you. There's no poisonous snakes.
Those are all in Australia.
Yeah,
Exactly. They
there's
shuffled them all over
minimal
there.
poisonous spiders. Yeah, that's all in Australia. So it was like you can walk through the jungle and not really worry about getting eaten by something
Well, that whole
dangerous.
jungle
That's true.
scene with the river looked to me like something that Steven Spielberg had put together for like Indiana Jones and the River of Death. You know, it really did look like a structured movie set. It was so beautiful.
It was hard to believe it was real.
There was a spider web. So in the episode, which I believe all the rafting and bungeeing was in episode 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the next scene was I was actually riding on the front of the raft.
Mm-hmm.
It was a section of the river. It was like the bucking bronco or something
Yeah,
like that.
right.
And I volunteered to go sit up front
Oh,
for
he
this.
volunteered. He told you.
I was
No,
gonna say-
I remember volunteering. He was
Yeah,
like, "Do I have a volunteer?" And I
can't
raised
see
my
it.
hand.
Take her.
To ride the bull.
To ride the bull, that's what it was.
I had
That's
my
exactly
hands
what it-
underneath my legs. I
It
was
was
not
called Ride
volunteering
the Bull,
for
and
that.
so
That's
I
what it
got
looked
up
like.
there, and you're supposed to hang onto the rope and put one arm in the air, and it like bucks way up in the air. And I remember, like, I was at the very top of it, and there was this, like, little stick, and you
A
can
tree.
see it in the footage. It's like a dead branch, but there's this massive spider
Oh,
web in
gosh.
the middle of it, and I
Yeah,
remember being
she got
like,
really
eye
close.
level with it, going, "Oh no! I'm gonna
So
get
you're-
spider web in my face."
So you weren't worried about having your head smashed in by a limb. You were worried about the spider.
I was definitely
Okay.
worried more about the spider
Get your
web.
priorities straight. I like it.
That's where, in the nightmare, you wake up in a cocoon and you're food for the next generation of spiders.
I
Like,
did see that in the edit, and I thought about zooming in on it, but there's only so much time I can put into the edit.
Well,
Yes.
if the spider you saw here before was large in your estimation,
Maybe that was my New Zealand
you
buddy.
should not come up and see the wolf spiders up in BC. They're big.
We've got bigger
We
ones
got 'em
Yeah.
here.
You got them here too.
Yeah.
mhm.
New Zealand was so up my alley by not having any of those
Yes.
venomous, dangerous
Yes,
things.
Yeah.
it definitely plus in the column for New Zealand.
That was great.
No wolves, no,
No bears.
Tasmanian devils,
No.
no kangaroos even.
Yeah,
Like, nothing that's
exactly.
gonna hurt you.
Nothing.
The funny thing there is everybody's wondering how we survive in North America with all the bears who would
Yeah.
be eating us.
Yeah, they thought North America was so dangerous. It
The
was
bears.
like
It's all
interesting.
bears.
It's all bears.
But that's part of why they're able to have those crazy birds and things. The
Well, that's true.
population, like ground dwelling birds all over the place, and
Nothing eating them.
There's the predators are so minimal there.
Yeah.
And they're so careful with everything
They don't
coming
want
in.
anyone
Yeah.
bringing in something.
Remember
in.
how serious
Yeah.
they were about bringing any nuts or seeds or anything like that? Like, even if you had
Yeah.
trail mix, I
Well,
mean, you had
remember
to get
when
rid of
we
it.
went to the big trees and we had to protect them, we had to
Yeah.
have our shoes clean
Mhm.
at those special shoe cleaning stations, which I think was episode 2 of your series.
I believe
Yes.
so. Yeah.
And those massive trees are subject to being
Some kind of
decimated by
infection.
these tiny bacteria that we had to clean off our shoes.
Mhm.
That was neat. But again, very impressive how seriously New Zealand takes these things that are a danger to their ecosystem or
Yeah.
to their population. I mean, they are
Yeah.
on top of it.
Well, be it an island nation, you kind of need to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they had us stand in an hour-long line because we had said, rightly disclosed that we had hiked in Alaska and we had the same boots. And
Right.
so they checked our boots to make sure they didn't have
Sanitize them.
Yeah.
I was just going to
Sanitized
say, it
them.
had to be desanitized to make sure we weren't bringing in some invasive bacteria or
Yeah.
species in.
I think you
How-
still beat us out through it all, though, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Because you guys
Just
had
had the
to do,
camera gear, yeah.
gear check or
Yeah.
something. Maybe I didn't disclose that.
Maybe.
Although
not.
I didn't have the same amount of camera gear you
No,
guys
you
did.
didn't.
So we have to go back to New Zealand because
Yes. We do.
we were cut short. We were there for about 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 weeks total, yeah. But the
And-
last week was locked down at that RV
It's
park.
true.
I
So-
counted the days up on the calendar because I hadn't remembered. It was 8 days that we stayed still, and they call campgrounds there holiday parks.
Mhm.
So we stayed at the Cambridge Top 10 Holiday Park, which was a very nice park. We were actually very close to the bathhouses and the dump station, so we were
Couldn't
able
use
to
the bathhouse.
Couldn't
Only
use
the
the
we
bathhouse,
could we
yeah.
could use the dump station.
That's all.
Well,
That's
the
all we
laundry,
used there.
The laundry was one
Yeah.
person at a time only, right? I remember.
Well, yeah, to protect people.
We could have.
No, it's just as well in the end. And when we find out, we'll probably find out that it was 2 years before we could have left. It's just as well.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
at the time I was thinking a couple months. At the
Yeah.
time I was thinking,
Yeah.
like 2-3 months, I could just stay here. And again, to me, I think I was more concerned about the risk of being on the plane flying for that long without knowing 100% what all of the protective gear was going to do for us.
Yeah.
No one knew
we
yet.
were at
Well, and
risk.
remember, we could not get anything.
No, that's right.
Remember
No
that
masks.
all of it, I mean, this was true in a lot of places. Like, all the hand sanitizer was gone, all the masks were gone.
Gloves.
We did finally get a thing of gloves at one point.
And we had those suits. Remember, we got those. They were like the
Yes, it was
hazmat
like
suits.
a body suit.
We were prepared for.
We looked
were-
like crash test dummies.
It looked like we were going to be boarding to fumigate the plane. Was really what it looked like.
Yeah.
But we were because again, we didn't know. Everything was an unknown.
It was too early.
So, should I tell the absinthe story?
Oh, that's right.
It's not what you're thinking. So when we couldn't find any hand sanitizer or rubbing alcohol or anything like that, we were looking at high enough proof alcohol
Forgot about
and
that.
liquors. And the only high enough proof liquor that we could find,
That
like
would actually
that
suffice
could
to
actually
kill bacteria.
kill, was absinthe. Except it was really expensive.
Yeah.
Like, New Zealand makes very
High-end.
high-end
premium.
expensive absinthe, and so we went into this liquor store and we're like, oh my gosh, no, we can't drop $100
On hand
on
sanitizer.
Yeah, right.
on a bottle of absinthe that we're wanting to use as hand sanitizer.
I'm glad we didn't, because we got the little bottle.
But we
Uh-huh,
found
yeah,
a
that
little
little
like
one, yeah.
airplane
And it
bottle.
was so sugary and sticky.
It was-
It would have been
Tom-
awful.
Yeah,
Tom
right.
puts some on his hands, and then his hands are all
It was
sticky.
awful.
We're like,
Never mind.
okay, that isn't gonna work.
I don't remember. Did we end up drinking it?
We did.
I think we
We
ended up
did.
giving it
You
a
did,
try.
or we did.
I think
don't
we all
recall.
did.
I
We
think
all
I think
tried
we
it.
all tried it,
But
and
I think Tom was the only one who seemed to be having a really good time on it, more than the rest of us.
Doesn't
And then
it
that
taste
made
like
us have a
licorice?
good time.
yeah, he really likes
I like
licorice.
licorice.
See, I don't like black
So
licorice.
I don't either.
Oh,
So
I
that's
do.
probably why he ended up
Drinking more of
doing
it.
more
Yeah.
of it. But yeah, I just remember we finally got some, and then it was like, oh, this isn't gonna work as hand sanitizer.
The best laid plans.
We tried. So I know I would definitely love to go back to New Zealand to wrap up the trip and kind of go up that west.
I'm ready. Let's go.
The west side of the island because
At the very, very southern tip.
Yes.
There's the penguins are down there, and there's just more towns. And I think
we also missed Abel Tasman National Park. Which
yes,
Oh, right.
we missed a lot actually.
Yeah.
And
I
we
would start on
also
the South
really
Island.
missed
Yeah.
out on the culture. Because everything started locking down. We didn't get to spend as much time with the New Zealanders as I think would have been.
That's true.
Yeah,
Neat.
that would have been really, really cool.
And they live in these neat little underground homes.
Oh yeah, the little
Right.
little
Well,
round
Hobbit-
doors.
Hobbits.
Oh,
Yeah, the little-
The hobbits?
Oh my God.
No?
No, they don't.
No, they don't. They live
See,
with sheep.
I didn't learn about that.
Live with sheep.
They all live with sheep. There are more sheep in New Zealand than New Zealanders.
We saw more sheep in Scotland, I think.
Probably,
There were a lot
yes.
of sheep in Scotland
Yes.
as well.
New Zealand was a beautiful country. We had great weather, I feel like.
We did.
Even though it was kind of weird, in the southern hemisphere, you go north and it gets warmer, and you go south and it gets colder.
The night sky was
yes.
mind-blowing, and your time-lapse night videography was stunning.
I can't even begin to explain how beautiful the night sky was. I tried to kind of hint at it in the video, but if you ever get a chance to go to the southern hemisphere, definitely spend some time looking up, because I didn't realize, I don't really think of the night sky as being something that I'm familiar with and I navigate by or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely can look up and be like, okay, I
It's
recognize.
familiar.
Yeah, right.
You
There's
see
the
the
Big
Big
Dipper,
Dipper, you
there's
see the
little
Orion.
You
Orion,
look up
see-
down
yeah.
there and it's like,
What is
Nothing.
this?
Yeah.
And there
It's
are
different.
blobs of things, and you're like,
Yeah.
that was
Is
what
that
really
a
got me
cloud?
was the large and small Magellanic clouds are other galaxies that you can see with the naked eye down there.
Mhm.
And the Milky Way is far brighter in the southern
Oh, yeah.
hemisphere, and it's because it's looking towards the galactic center. So it is just everything about the southern night sky
It's
is
better.
so much better.
Well,
it's
and maybe
startlingly
Except
beautiful.
there's no northern lights.
There's no.
Well,
there are.
Oh, there's
southern
southern
lights.
lights,
Oh,
that's right,
yeah.
yes.
Just as
Aurora
just as strong.
Australis.
Well,
That's
and now that we have had our first great, fantastic experience with the northern lights just about a month ago, I'm like, I want to do that.
We're all
again.
in.
Yeah, let's do it.
But I mean, we also had the advantage of being in some very remote places where there
Yes.
was no, sky glow. There wasn't another light.
Yeah.
So as long as our RV lights were off, you had a show going on up above. It was cool.
Every time I'd step out, wow, that sky is startlingly
Really.
It's a
beautiful.
good thing when you did that, you often had a camera because that was really helpful.
I remember when we were there, we were like doing some calculations to try to wrap our minds around the size of New Zealand versus the United States, and like we were thinking. I think we came up with that like it was as long as like from Oregon down to Southern California, and then like the population.
The length of California.
Yeah, and then the population wise, I can't remember what we found out, but it was so much less that like you just really get to experience that, and it was so much more remote feeling that they didn't have these big interstates going in between all the towns. It was still all these really windy roads, which got tiresome sometimes when you're like trying to get somewhere and you're like, it's just right over there, and you're like driving for 3 hours going,
it's a small country, but it's definitely slower to traverse than the US.
But like in a charming way. Like there were all those little towns, and they were all so
similar to a lot of
mom and pop shops,
rural
not
Europe,
a whole
but
lot
no big box stores.
No. Was there a food from New Zealand that you miss?
Oh my gosh, no. Because we
I can't wait.
Wait, that sounds like a story. I thought this was a simple question.
Funny. We ended up with like 6 jars of pickles in our motorhome fridge.
In New Zealand?
Because we were trying to find dill pickles.
Oh.
And in New Zealand, dill pickles do not exist.
They're not a
thing.
They're all sweet gherkins.
Great.
And so we kept... And I don't like sweet pickles.
Well,
you should have given them to us.
We didn't even know you had the collection.
Sure,
You probably gave us 1 jar. It lasted us the whole rest of the trip.
But we like eat a lot of dill pickles. It's just the thing.
All right.
And,
This is a
so
confession.
every
Make
single
note,
time
everyone.
we would go to the grocery store, we would buy another jar of pickles. We'd like spend so
Hoping.
much time. We're like spinning all the
You
labels.
didn't say what they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And, you
So
know,
it didn't have a lot of sugar. We thought maybe it's
Take
sour
a chance.
dill.
Yeah,
we
right.
get back to the motorhome, we open it up, and we no.
I don't mind them, so I actually invented all sorts of little pickly dishes. And one of my favorites was a cracker with hummus, a sweet pickle, and some hot sauce.
Nice.
like a sriracha.
Yeah,
That
right, okay.
combination, delicious.
Okay, good.
Oh, and then the other weird culinary thing that we experienced in New Zealand
Ketchup.
was we got fish and chips on the ferry going across.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were like, I guess that was the thing in Wellington, and fish and chips, and we filled up our ketchup. We go to dip it in there and take a bite, and it tasted like Christmas. They put cloves in their ketchup,
Oh,
Really?
right.
like
Oh,
really
yeah.
strong cloves.
Yeah,
that I was
right.
like
I don't
so
remember that.
surprised.
And we
You would
found,
think ketchup would be standardized.
we found that all their ketchups had clove in it. Also a lot of mint in a lot of things as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So
Well, there's a
That
lot of
makes sense.
lamb.
A lot of lamb.
Oh,
Clove
lamb
and
versus
mint, and those combinations we just weren't really used to. So there definitely are culinary differences.
But I mean, on a whole, like the food in New Zealand was fabulous. I
Yes.
wouldn't complain.
It wasn't
was just,
bad.
It just
A few
surprised me
unique
at the
things.
grocery store a few times of like dill pickles.
I miss, and not that we miss it because we have found it in North America, but I miss the Whitaker's chocolate.
Oh.
Oh,
So-
Because those giant blocks of fantastic chocolate for so
I'm gonna-
great a price. I
I'm
was
gonna
like,
make-
oh my
Yeah,
god.
it was really inexpensive
was.
everywhere.
I'm going to
Yes.
make a recommendation for anybody who likes milk chocolate and peanuts. The Whitaker's peanut slab.
The
is
little one, yeah.
to die for.
And we get those up in BC. They have them at the grocery store around the corner.
Remember, we
Really
had,
not.
at least I had a bunch of cash left at the end.
and you
And
went at the airport.
I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with
That's
this. So I
right.
went to the airport store and I just spent it all on, I had just stacks of
Big.
Whitaker's chocolate bars.
Yes.
Smart, duty free.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they have
I
the
remember-
peanut block and the cashew block, the almond block,
Yes.
all the different types.
I remember
Delicious.
stopping at that one convenience store, and we ended up buying, and it really wasn't expensive, like all this really good chocolate. And so we ended up buying, like, I think between the 4 of us, we had like 12
That sounds about the right
big
ratio.
chocolate bars.
Yeah.
This is the right ratio. 3
course.
giant chocolate bars each is a good start.
It's-
Oh,
yeah.
and then the New Zealand wine was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Sauvignon
Oh.
Wine and
Blanc.
chocolate. There we
Wine
go.
Wine and
chocolate.
That's what you want from
Yes.
New Zealand.
And then there
And
was something
lamb.
else.
No, they weren't doing the
we
lamb.
didn't-
we didn't do the lamb.
But they had great
You did not have
seafood.
lamb.
The
They
seafood
did.
was great.
Oh yeah, the Ora King salmon.
Oh,
from
yeah.
New Zealand.
That was really
that
good.
was really
That's
good.
a unique fish that they have there, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when are we going back?
Oh, and then
Oh.
remember, do you remember finding all the kiwis not kiwis, the
Avocados.
Avocados. Yeah, and that
Oh.
one little
There
weird
was like
spot.
this stand that just said
Free-
avocados
free
free.
Free avocados.
And we like
It was like a
took
personal-
grocery
personal
bag and
farm.
just filled it up, and we had a great.
We must have taken
Was that on
100
the South
avocados.
Island?
We had a
That
lot
was
of.
North Island.
Was it North Island?
Yeah,
I'm
and
trying
they
to
lasted us the whole time because they were not ripe. So remember, we were putting them in the cabinets,
Oh,
warming
that's
them up.
right. That's right.
And once they ripened, we
That
had
was-
a lot of avocados.
That was on that road down to that waterfront
Yeah.
area where we camped.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
There
was
was all
cool.
those huge hedges and
Yes.
stuff, and they had the kiwi trees, and
That's
there was
right.
something else they were growing. Can't remember exactly what it was.
Oh
It was
man,
really fun.
that's so long
when-
ago.
So
Yeah.
when
I
are
can't
we
believe-
going back?
I don't have it on the calendar yet. We'll have to plan it.
Oh,
Oops. I forgot to
is
silence
that our
my
travel agent
phone.
calling?
Uh-oh. That's the
Oh.
first rule of
Yeah, really.
That
Oh.
is a beginner rookie mistake there,
Yeah.
mister.
Hang my head
To
in
the
shame.
corner. Go.
Well, we've been chatting for probably over an hour, and we could probably keep going, but we wanted to share this little behind the scenes kind of discussion and a little bit more of what it was really like, because honestly, once things started to turn down, I mean, it's weird to film when things aren't good.
It is.
So the footage kind of got a little bit more sparse, and we just kind of wanted to take this opportunity, especially since they were here visiting with us, to talk about it and reminisce. Because
Well, and the fourth
it's really
episode
fun.
came out like literally like a day before we were arriving here,
Yeah.
so it was perfect
And
timing.
we hadn't had a chance to see it, so we got to watch it with you.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Thank you,
right.
thank you for making 4 wonderful home movies for us to share with our families and doing all the editing.
Brought back so many great memories.
Yeah, definitely, and we'd love to go back. And
Well, I part of this for me was, John and I are very independent. We travel mostly alone, but we found that when we travel with people that we're very close with, there's a shared experience that we've had with you guys in so many places now. And also the fact that we ran into a bit
Global
of
pandemic.
a bit of a crisis situation, not for us personally, it wasn't a crisis, but it was obviously a challenging situation. And to have that situation while we were together and could lean on each other, I think it would make me more comfortable in the future doing it again. So when you guys decide you're doing your next international trip, ring us up so we can go.
sounds good. Likewise.
Deal.
Well,
Awesome. All right, well, I think that wraps it up. If you guys have any additional questions, you can drop them in the comment section below. We'll do our best to answer them, and maybe the RV Geeks will hop on there and answer any too if you have some specifically for them.
and I'll make a little self-serving announcement in case this comes out first. We're coming back to YouTube now that we are no longer on the show and doing all kinds of things about our new rigs. So
Yeah, you might almost. No,
You can't
No,
quite
can't
see it
from
It's
here.
just out of sight.
It's hidden.
But maybe we'll get another little video up here soon, giving a short little tour and pointing everybody to the right direction to get the full tour. So
Yes.
thanks again for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.